I wanted to make a quick video about my ball python named Cosby that you see here and kind of show you him and his enclosure and what I've done to set it up and what's kind of worked well for me. So this is Cosby. I've had him for a little over a year now. I got him a year ago in August, and I believe he's about 2.5 years old because they said he was a little over a year old when I got him. And he's basically a normal ball python, maybe with some other genetics that make him a little bit more yellow in color than the standard ones that are maybe a bit darker. But he's been a good snake, and I've had ball pythons before when I was a kid, back in the 80s and stuff, when these things were kind of a new animal in the pet trade. There wasn't as much information about them. So I didn't know what I was doing when I was a kid, and they never worked out well. One in particular I had never shed properly, and his shed just got so stuck that his tail began to rot and fall off at the tip. And he had I didn't heat the tank correctly. I was using a heating rock, so his underside scales, like you see here, would be burned, and I was too dumb to even know that they were getting burned. And he eventually died and stopped eating and died. So once I got back into snakes as an adult, I wanted to kind of fix the wrongs that I had as a kid when I was taking care of them and kind of do it right. And Cosby's been really successful. Since I've had him, he's never missed a meal. He eats well, he sheds really well, and he's a perfectly healthy snake. As you can see, he just kind of likes to chill out like this. So I will watch a movie and just have him on the sofa with me as I watch a movie. He's really, if your body's warm, he wants to stick around your body. So he'll kind of just wrap himself around. They're real gentle, very friendly snakes. The only time he ever bit me was a mistake that I made when I was feeding him. And he thought that my finger was the mouse and went for my finger instead. That was completely my fault. He's never bit me defensively or anything like that. So, anyways, he's a good snake. So he'll just hang out like this. So I could just walk around the house with him and do what I want. I was just cleaning out his enclosure, and he was just kind of hanging out with me as I was doing that. He's very chilled out and a nice, friendly snake. So, wanted to show you his enclosure. I don't know the gallon size of this, but it's a 4 foot by, I think, 18 by 18. So 4 foot long by 18 wide by 18 high. And I've just got it sitting on this old console stereo here. I had him in a smaller enclosure when I got him, and then I upgraded him to this probably about 6 months ago. Um, and ideally, you want to have an enclosure that lets them stretch out lengthwise. So he's not going to get much bigger than he is now. They don't get, he's a male, so he won't get much bigger than 4 foot. And he's just about 4 foot now. So this is just the right size for him. I've got at the top here uh, a ceramic heat emitter. It looks like a light fixture, but it actually is not. It's just a ceramic kind of a bulb sort of thing that doesn't produce light. And I have that because the ambient temperature in the tank needs to be really up around 80 degrees for most snakes, for most ball pythons. So without that on top there, the ambient temperature, because it's a taller tank, wouldn't get as warm as it should be. Um, and then I have two heat mats, one under the warm side, which you see here, and one under the cool side here. Both of those heat mats are controlled by a separate thermostat. So there's that thermostat there and this thermostat over here. Now this thermostat, as you can see, this is the hot side. It says that it's 103.6 degrees. And that's what it's set at, but that's because the heater is under the tank. What I have is I've got a thermometer that is under the substrate. If I can get that without the glare, you can see it's 90.5 degrees, which is just where you want it. You want it right around 90 degrees. And that thermostat, or that thermometer that is goes in sync with the thermostat, the thermometer has a probe that's underneath his warm hide. It's buried into the dirt there. So that's a real world temperature. So the temperature where he's going to lay in the warm side is 90 degrees. But to make it 90 degrees, I have to have the thermostat set at 104. And the same thing on the cool side. Cool side, we've got him at 85 degrees. Now that's a bit warmer than normal, and that's just because I had just cleaned out the enclosure and sprayed it down with some warm water. This normally gets down to closer to 82 degrees. It says 86 now. but it's got a separate thermostat as well. Typically, this is closer to 80 degrees. It's warmer now because, like I said, I just cleaned everything out with warm water. But the idea behind that is so that if he gets too hot over here, he can move over to the cool side if he wants to, and he regulates his temperature that way. He moves around a lot at night. He never moves around in the daytime, very rarely. And you also notice I have two different types of substrate. So I've got this here is a mixture of cocoa fiber and aspen, and then I've got straight aspen over here. The reason for that is just how they like to regulate their temperature from going from one spot to the other. They also like to regulate their humidity. And the cocoa fiber, I keep more moist. I spray it down and I mist it throughout the day. And then I got this little, again, I just did this now, so it's registering way higher. It was, let's say, 80% humidity. It's normally at about 60%, which is what you would want this side to be. But I just freshened this up, so that's why it's a bit more moist. But if you keep one side at about 60% humidity, and then this side over here, without misting it, it'll get down to probably like 30%. That's what you want. Because this way, what I learned too is if they sit in a completely moist environment for a long period of time, they'll develop scale rot on their bellies. So this way, when he moves around at night, he's getting a chance to dry off too. And I've got lots of clutter in here. This big batch of vines, this is plastic vines, that he likes to crawl through that and hide in that and just kind of move around through it. It gives him something to do when he moves around at night because he does like to be hidden most of the time. If he was in an enclosure that was too wide open without a bunch of clutter in it, then he'd feel too exposed. Then he just may not want to eat, or he may just not feel as healthy as he should. So that's why I've got that mess in there as well. And then these two big hides, they're big enough for him. You don't want him to be too big because, again, if he feels too exposed inside, he won't feel comfortable. So this way he can choose which one he wants to go in. And sometimes if I noticed, like, for example, this big one on the warm side, when he was smaller, I would have to put stuff inside that hide. So I'd put some of that vines inside there so he felt a little bit more nestled in because they do like to kind of feel nestled when they're hiding throughout the day. Anyways, water dish, just the standard water dish. He drinks from it every once in a while. I wouldn't even say he drinks every day. Probably every 2 or 3 days he'll take some water out of there. I think he gets most of his moisture from his food. But that's the tank. You can see I've got some stuff on the lid here. I want to keep the humidity as enclosed as possible. They don't need a lot of ventilation. Some people don't even have a screen top. They'll just use like something that has some holes in it, rather than an actual screen. I just put that laminated wood up there so that it kind of keeps the humidity in. And then you can see I've got a styrofoam back that kind of helps keep the humidity in as well. And then on the sides, because like I said, they don't like to feel too exposed. If I just had clear glass there, he would feel like he's wide open all the time. So I just put some of that paneling on the sides as well. I had styrofoam on these walls too, but the trouble was he kept pulling it off. And I didn't want to secure it with tape or anything because the stickiness of the tape could get to him. That black tape you see there, that's on the other side of the glass, so he doesn't actually touch it. That kind of goes with this guy here too. So these things are made to stick on the glass, but the sticky side of the back of it can get into their scales and cause some problems. So I just remove the stickiness and I just leave it there on the ground. That way it's kind of a better reading of the humidity on the ground where he's going to be most of the time anyways. But that's pretty much his enclosure. I'm going to go ahead, and I've been holding him this whole time. I'll go ahead and put him in and see if he will crawl off of me. They move really slow because, like I said, they're very gentle snakes. They're not going to run away from you. They can escape. They're good at finding a way out of the enclosure if you're not careful, but you'd have to be far away from them for that to happen. They're not going to get away from you like like maybe something like I don't know, a garter snake or even a corn snake or something like that that's a bit more agile. And he's going to go right into his hide. I should also mention they don't need daylight. I've got this light here set up on a timer. And that way he knows when it's nighttime. That turns off at 8 o'clock at night and comes on at 7 in the morning. That just helps him know when to eat because they eat at night. And sometimes if the lights are on in the room or something like that, he might get fooled by it. But typically, when that light comes off, he knows it's nighttime and he comes out and explores and is looking for some food. And I'm going to go ahead and just shut this here. This is just a sliding glass door. It's got a lock on it, not that you need to lock it, but it just keeps it from him pushing the glass open, because he can kind of push it with his nose if he wanted to. And there you have it. So that's Cosby, ball python. He's going to probably crawl around in there and just check things out, because like I said, I did just clean it before this video. Um, and he'll get settled back into one of those two hides for the rest of the day, and then he'll come out at night. So there you have it.